The summons arrived without warning, transmitted through 3 layers of secure channels, and encoded in a format Lieutenant Aaron Ward had never even seen before. The message contained no introduction, no explanation, just coordinates, a seal he didn't recognize, and a single line of text that might as well have been a threat. Attendance is mandatory. Do not be late. And so Aaron found himself standing in a hall that looked less like a room and more like crystallized starlight forced into architectural shape. The ceilings curved like frozen auroras. Light refracted through the walls in impossible patterns. Every surface hummed with a resonance that made his bones vibrate. The court of the Elendari was gathered around him, tall, elegant, luminous, and all staring at him with the exact same expression. That's the one, that tiny human. Aaron cleared his throat and resisted the urge to wave. His translator kept feeding him phrases like polite dismay and shocked confusion, and the particularly concerning fearful anticipation, none of which made him feel better about being dragged halfway across the galaxy. A tall figure in robes that shimmered like sheeted moonlight approached him, the royal chamberlain, if Aaron had interpreted the insignia correctly. "You will remain silent for the royal entrance," the chamberlain said in flawless standard, each word layered with harmonic undertones that almost made Aaron dizzy. "You will speak only when addressed. You will not approach the royal family unless permitted. Understood?" "Sure," Aaron said. "Silent still, not approaching anyone, I can do that. One small question, why exactly am I here?" The chamberlain's bioluminescent patterns shifted violently through colors Aaron's translator refused to categorize. "That," he said, "is what we hope to determine." Before Aaron could question the certainty with which that statement scared him, the massive crystalline doors at the far end of the hall opened with a chime that seemed to echo through the fabric of reality. The entire court bowed. Aaron hastily followed suit. Queen Elendra entered like gravity itself bent around her. She was tall even by Elendari standards, her presence a deliberate force. Her skin shimmered in deep silver blue, and her eyes held galaxies. But Aaron barely had time to take her in before his attention snagged on the small figure holding her hand. A girl no older than 6 by human estimate stood beside the queen, her tiny form almost swallowed by ceremonial robes. Her skin flickered through rapid colors, excitement, fear, hope, something else Aaron couldn't read. Her luminous eyes locked onto him instantly. He froze. Children weren't supposed to stare at strangers like they had found the missing piece of their soul. The queen ascended the throne. The girl remained at her side, her fingers gripping her mother's robe as if she feared being swept away. The chamberlain stepped forward to announce something formal. And then the girl made a sound, a gasp, high, sharp. Filled with something like disbelief, her small hand rose, trembling, and pointed directly at Aaron. "That's him," she whispered, but her voice carried effortlessly through the crystalline acoustics. "Mama, that's him." Silence slammed into the hall. Every Elendari froze mid-breath. Their skin patterns synchronized into one blinding hue Aaron's translator rendered as impossible, unthinkable, error, emotional state undefined. Queen Elendra's composure shattered for a fraction of a second. Her luminous eyes widened, fear, relief, confusion all flashing at once. "Lyria," she said softly, kneeling beside the girl. "Are you certain?" The child nodded so hard her hair shook. Tears, opalescent, glowing, began to fall. "He came," she whispered. "Mama, he finally came. He promised. He said he would." Then she ran. Palace guards moved instantly, but the queen snapped her hand up. Every armored figure froze like statues. Lyria crashed into Aaron's legs with startling force. And suddenly, he was holding a crying alien princess who clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a dissolving universe. Her small hands gripped his uniform desperately. Aaron looked helplessly at the queen. "Your Majesty," he squeaked. "I think something is wrong. I've never met her, ever." Queen Elendra descended the steps, regal even in alarm. "There is no mistake," she said, voice trembling beneath iron control. "My daughter has identified you as her Kesharian, her destined guardian, the one bound to her life by forces older than our empire." Aaron felt his stomach drop to the center of the planet. "Yeah, see, that cannot be right. I'm a survey officer, a very boring one." The royal scholar approached, his expression like he'd just watched physics fall apart. "Kesharian recognition," he said, "has never identified an off-world species in 10,000 years. Lyria, they relocated to a smaller council chamber, smaller being a generous word, since the room still looked like it had been grown from condensed moonlight. But at least there were fewer witnesses to Aaron's escalating existential crisis. Lyria refused to let go of his hand. The moment the Chamberlain had gently tried to separate them, the little princess made a wounded sound so sharp that half the advisors flinched. Aaron stopped resisting instantly. Now she sat beside him on a cushion that lifted and reshaped itself around her tiny frame. Her fingers wrapped around his with the possessive certainty of someone who believed she'd finally reclaimed something precious. Aaron had absolutely no idea what to do with any of this. Queen Elendra sat across from him, flanked by scholars and advisors whose bioluminescent patterns vibrated between awe and fear. Every pair of luminous eyes in the room was fixed on Aaron, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, most with quiet panic. "Lieutenant Ward," the Queen began, "I understand this situation must be confusing." "Confusing," Aaron repeated, laughing nervously, "is definitely one word. Others include alarming, impossible, and well, nope, just nope." One scholar made a sound his translator rendered as sympathetic distress. The Queen gestured to the elderly scholar who'd spoken in the throne room. "Elder Thalen will explain." Thalen opened a book, an actual physical book, its pages shimmering like woven starlight. He set it on the table with reverence. "For 10,000 years," he said, "the Kesharian bond has been fundamental to Elendari society. At birth, each child carries the innate sense of who their destined guardian will be, who will protect them, guide them, shape who they become. This recognition manifests upon first encounter." He turned the glowing page. The symbols shifted like they existed in too many dimensions. "The bond has never misidentified, it has never faltered, it has never involved an outsider." He looked at Aaron with something that lived between horror and awe. "Until today." Lyria squeezed Aaron's hand tightly as if to emphasize the point. "You saved me," she said simply. Aaron blinked. "Princess, I promise I've never saved anyone. I'm not a soldier, I'm a surveyor. I avoid danger on purpose." "Not yet," Lyria corrected, completely serious. "But you will, you already did, you promised." A shiver climbed Aaron's spine. Queen Elendra leaned forward. "Lyria, sweetheart, what promise?" The child looked up at her mother with luminous certainty. "In my dreams," she said. "Every night he's there, he teaches me the star songs, he tells me jokes, he tells me not to be afraid. And when the bad light comes, he protects me. Then he goes away, and I can't find him again." She turned to Aaron, eyes bright with aching relief. "But you came back, you said you would." Aaron felt something crack open in his chest. The certainty in her voice felt ancient, heavy, real. "What exactly," he managed, "is the bad light?" The room tensed. The scholars exchanged glances that Aaron's instincts, honed from years of reading hostile mining cartels, interpreted as we know something, but we hoped we'd never have to say it out loud. Queen Elendra exhaled, her skin flickering with remembered fear. "6 months ago," she said quietly, "there was an attack, not from any species we know. Entities of pure dimensional energy breached our reality, hostile, incomprehensible. They targeted the palace. The royal guard fought them for hours." Her voice trembled. Lyria was in the garden when the breach opened. Aaron's breath caught. "She should have," the Queen's voice cracked. "But something stopped the entities. When we reached her, she was unconscious but unharmed. The energy had dissipated. We never understood why." "Because he stopped them," Lyria said matter-of-factly. "He came in a ship with a funny name. He told me to sing the counting song. Then the bad light went away, but then he disappeared." Aaron stared at her. "I was 3 sectors away 6 months ago," he said. "Conducting a survey on an empty system. I have logs." Thalen lifted a data tablet. "And yet," he said softly, "your ship's black box shows a conflicting record. A 48-hour period in which your vessel entered orbit around Elendra. The same day as the breach, the same hour." Aaron went cold. "That's impossible." His calm chimed. Providence, his ship's AI, spoke in a tone Aaron had never heard. "Lieutenant, the Elder is correct. I have 2 complete sets of logs, both internally consistent, both impossible. In one record, we never left the Keplerist system. In the other, we came here. Both cannot be true, and yet both are." Queen Elendra's breath trembled. Then the prophecy was right. Thalen flipped to a page filled with shifting symbols. He read aloud, voice resonant. "When the luminous throne is shadowed by unbound light, a guardian shall come who walks between moments. He who arrives before he knows he is needed. He who protects before he remembers protecting." He closed the book. "Lieutenant Ward, the prophecy speaks of woven time, moments overlapping, a person existing in 2 realities at once. Aaron swallowed hard. So you're telling me I traveled through time? Not time, Thalen corrected. A fracture in reality, a weaving. You existed in two timelines simultaneously. One version of you came here and protected the princess. The other remained unaware. When the weaving collapsed, the memories stayed with the version who never returned. Aaron's brain gave up, and now? Queen Elendra's voice softened. Now, Lieutenant Ward, you must choose. Lyria has identified you as her destined guardian. You protected her once, you may have to protect her again. The explanation took hours. Hours during which Aaron repeatedly questioned every life choice that had led him here, including accepting a navigation officer's promotion that, apparently, made his ship more visible to cosmic prophecies. Thalen and the scholars described the Kesharian oath in detail. Aaron listened, nodding slowly as if any of this made logical sense. You would be responsible for Princess Lyria's education, Thalen said. Her safety. Her moral and personal development. You will stand as her shield when she is threatened. Her voice when she cannot speak. Her guide when she is lost. That's a lot for someone you met 10 minutes ago, Aaron muttered. Lyria squeezed his hand like she'd caught the thought before he had. You already did all that, she said softly. You just don't remember. Queen Elendra's gaze softened, wariness and gratitude blending into something fragile and dangerous. You would be considered part of the royal family, she said, with all the protections and all the responsibilities that entails. And dangers, Aaron asked. The queen didn't hesitate. Many. There was a moment, one suspended between heartbeats, where Aaron felt the weight of the choice before him. He wasn't special. He wasn't heroic. He was a surveyor who cataloged rocks and sometimes complained loudly about atmospheric particulates. But the child gripping his hand wasn't imagining things. Her certainty was absolute, unshakable. That alone was enough to anchor him to something bigger than uncertainty. He exhaled slowly. All right, he said. If I made promises, whether I remember them or not, I'm not the kind of man who breaks them. I accept. Lyria didn't leap. She didn't yell. She just let out a trembling breath and leaned her forehead against his arm, a gesture so earnest it nearly undid him. The following days blurred together as Aaron was assigned guest quarters in the palace. The rooms changed their lighting, temperature, even the texture of the walls to his comfort, an elegant gesture that only made the weight of his new role heavier. Princess Lyria visited every morning, not formally, not with attendants. She simply appeared, silent as a breath, clutching a tablet or a glowing crystal ready to learn. Or, more accurately, ready to teach him things he was supposed to have taught her already. You said humans like coffee because it reminds them they survived something dangerous, she explained one morning while Aaron sipped a beverage the palace kitchen had attempted to approximate. Something about how the bitterness is proof of bravery. That does sound like something I'd say, Aaron muttered. She brightened. See, you remember a little. I think that's called guessing. Same thing, she said confidently. The child had a strange way of speaking, simple and clear, but edged with a wisdom that didn't belong to someone her age. The dreams, the timelines, the prophecy, she felt all of it without understanding the mechanics. Yet she carried it with a calmness Aaron didn't fully grasp. The queen visited occasionally, either to observe their lessons or to ensure Aaron wasn't unintentionally teaching her daughter how to commit tax fraud. He wasn't, probably. On the 5th day, a summons arrived. Temporal analysis conference, immediate attendance required. Aaron followed a royal escort to a chamber filled with scholars wearing robes covered in mathematical symbols that shimmered with each breath. A woman whose skin glowed the academic shade of terrified curiosity greeted him. I am Lasari, she said. I lead the Dimensional Research Division. Great, Aaron said. I love when conversations begin with words like dimensional and division. That's usually when things are going well. Lasari didn't smile. We analyzed your ship's quantum imprint. The results are unprecedented. She tapped a panel. A hologram unfolded, 2 timelines, running parallel, occasionally touching, merging, splitting, weaving like threads of cosmic cloth. This, she said, is your life for the past year. One line held Aaron's familiar trajectory, scans, reports, surveys. The other showed his ship entering Elendari space, descending into atmosphere, landing, departing. Your consciousness, Lasari explained, remained in the unaltered timeline, the one you remember. But your physical presence was pulled into a woven moment, a fracture where time briefly lost linearity. And I just went along for the ride without knowing. Not exactly. The version of you who existed in woven time acted with full awareness. But that version's memories collapsed when the timelines separated. They exist, buried in quantum space, but inaccessible. So somewhere inside me, Aaron said slowly, is a version of myself who already lived through all of this. Yes, Lissari replied, and who made promises, decisions, a choice to protect Princess Lyria. Queen Elendra, who stood at the back of the room, stepped forward. Can his memories be restored? Lissari hesitated. Possibly, but the risk is severe. If we destabilize the quantum imprint, Lieutenant Ward may become unanchored. He could slip out of linear time entirely. Aaron considered that, then shook his head. No, I don't need the memories. I just need to honor whatever that version of me saw in Lyria. Lyria, who had secretly followed them into the chamber, beamed. You said that before too, she whispered. Training began that afternoon. Not Aaron's training, Lyria's. Every detail of the dimensional breach fascinated the scholars, but it terrified Aaron. The entities hadn't been random. They hadn't been chaotic. They had been targeting her. Her harmonics destabilized the breaches, Lissari explained. Her voice interacts with dimensional frequencies in a way we never believed possible. You mean her singing scares away interdimensional monsters? Aaron asked. Precisely. Lyria hummed. Aaron woke before dawn, heart racing, breath shallow, pulled from sleep by something he couldn't name. Not a sound, not a dream, more like a pressure, a wrongness. The kind of instinct that bypassed conscious thought and slammed directly into survival instinct. He threw on his uniform and bolted into the palace hallway before his mind caught up with his body. He didn't run to the comms desk. He didn't call guards. He didn't even stop to think. He ran toward Lyria's chambers. As if he'd done it before. 2 guards lay on the floor outside her door, alive but unconscious, energy scorch marks across their armor. The door hung open, rippling at the edges as if reality itself had trouble staying still around it. That wrong feeling grew sharper, closer, hungry. Inside, Lyria was sitting up in bed, her tiny hands clutching her blankets, wide, luminous eyes fixed on a point in the center of the room, where the air was tearing open. A swirling distortion pulsed like a wound. Colors that did not exist in their reality flickered violently, trying to force themselves into existence. A shrill resonance filled the room, vibrating along Aaron's bones. Dimensional breach. Again. Aaron, Lyria cried, voice thin with terror. He didn't hesitate. He moved, placing himself between her and the breach with an instinct so deep it shocked him. It wasn't bravery. It wasn't training. It was memory, or something older than memory. Aaron felt something inside him snap into alignment, like gears clicking into place in a machine he didn't know he was part of. His breath steadied. His vision sharpened. And without understanding how or why, he lifted his hands toward the breach. Just like the man in the archival image. Just like the version of himself Lyria remembered. The distortion recoiled. Not because of Aaron, but because Lyria started singing. Her voice trembled at first, but the moment Aaron looked back at her, she inhaled shakily and nodded. She trusted him, absolutely, unconditionally. He turned back to the breach. He reached, not physically, but with something he had no name for. A burning cold pressure shoved against him, trying to collapse the space between them. A whisper in a language without sound scraped against his thoughts. It wanted her. It wanted the child. It wanted to erase what she would become. Not happening, Aaron growled. He pushed harder, focusing on the strange sensation thrumming beneath his skin. A resonance he had never noticed in his life but now felt as intimately as his own heartbeat. The breach stuttered. Lyria's voice gained strength, clear, bright, impossibly harmonic. The sound rippled through the air, weaving patterns the breach struggled against. Dimensional energy buckled. Aaron held it in place, held reality still. Held the door shut, and Lyria sang it closed. The breach snapped out of existence with a sound like cracking glass. Aaron collapsed to one knee, gasping. Aaron, Lyria scrambled across the floor and threw her arms around him. You came. You stopped it again, you promised. He forced a shaky smile. Of course I came, you called. Her tiny forehead pressed into his shoulder. You always come. Guards stormed into the room. Behind them, Queen Elendra. Her eyes landed on Aaron, kneeling, breath ragged, holding her trembling daughter, and pure terror flickered across her features. Not fear of Aaron, fear for Lyria. Fear that the prophecy was unfolding faster than she could control. She sang, Aaron said, voice rough. It reacted to her voice again. Elendra closed her eyes. She is being targeted. Aaron nodded, and I think I know why. The council chamber felt heavier this time. No longer a room of scholars and theories, but a war room. Lissari brought up recordings of the breach's final moments. The energy signature pulsed with a pattern Aaron recognized instinctively, though he didn't know why. Thalen paced, muttering to himself. Queen Elendra stood near the window, staring into the crimson horizon as if trying to read the future in its glow. "It's Lyria," Aaron said quietly. "They want her." Elendra turned sharply. "Why, she is a child." Lissari interjected. "Not just a child, look." She played a new hologram, Lyria humming, her voice producing harmonic waves, space deforming in response. Aaron swallowed. "You're telling me her voice affects dimensional stability?" "More than that," Lissari said. "Her harmonic frequency disrupts the entity's existence. She can repel them, seal them, silence them." Thalen's skin flashed the color of horrified realization. "The ancient texts," he whispered. "The royal gift, the Song of Order." Aaron blinked. "Sounds poetic and terrifying." "The gift manifests once in a generation," Thalen said. "A child who can impose harmonic stability on chaotic space. A voice that can bind reality." It was believed to be symbolic. "It is not symbolic," Lissari said flatly. "It is Lyria." Queen Elendra sat slowly, as if her legs had finally given way beneath the weight of the truth. "And the entities, whatever they are," Aaron said, "want to stop her before she learns how powerful she can become." Silence fell like a stone. Finally, the queen whispered, "Then she must be trained." "We're already doing that," Lissari said. "No," Elendra said firmly. "She must be protected." Her eyes landed on Aaron. "With everything we have." Aaron straightened. "You don't have to ask. I'm here. I'll stay. I'll protect her, whatever it takes." Lyria, who had slipped into the chamber unnoticed, rushed to him and wrapped herself around his arm. "I told you," she said to her mother, smiling through the fear. "He always comes." Aaron's throat tightened, because the way she said it, the unwavering certainty, felt less like a child's faith, and more like a memory she carried from a version of him who had once stood in this same place, faced this same threat, and made the same vow. "I will protect you, across timelines, across anything." And now Aaron Ward understood that he wasn't stepping into a destiny, he was stepping back into it. Training Lyria to shape harmonic energy turned out to be the most delicate, terrifying, awe-inspiring task Aaron had ever taken part in. And he'd once negotiated peace between two mining guilds by bribing them with free coffee samples, so his standards were not low. The palace's Hall of Resonance, an acoustic chamber designed centuries ago by Elendari seers, became their new battlefield. The room shimmered with crystalline curves that captured and amplified every vibration. Even a footstep produced echoes like distant bells. Lyria stood in the center, small and steady, eyes bright with determination. Aaron stood 6 feet behind her, not because he wanted distance, but because Lissari insisted. "Her early harmonic attempts can destabilize local geometry," the scholar said. Aaron blinked. "Destabilize." "Yes, space may bend, or fold." "Fold," Aaron repeated faintly, "like laundry." Thalen sighed, "If only." Lyria giggled, which caused a bench to shift 3 inches to the left. Aaron flinched. "Okay," he said weakly, "no pressure." Lyria straightened. Then, with a deep breath that looked too mature for her tiny body, she began to sing. Not words, not a melody, a tone, pure, shimmering, impossibly precise. The room answered, the walls vibrated, the light shifted into fractal patterns, air rippled like heat above a desert. Lissari's readings jumped. "She's synchronizing with subspatial frequencies," the scholar said. "Higher than last time, much higher." Aaron watched, breath caught in his throat. Lyria looked transformed, her skin glowed. Her hair lifted slightly as if gravity were rethinking its priorities. Her voice held resonance that didn't belong in this universe. Then the tone slipped, a small crack, a waver. Instantly the energy surged, destabilizing. Aaron moved without thinking, reaching her just as the air warped and a thin, shimmering tear began forming. "No, no, hey, eyes on me," he said, kneeling beside her. Her voice trembled. "I can't hold it." "Yes, you can." He rested a steady hand on her back. "You have more power than you think, and you're not alone. I'm here. I've got you." She looked at him with wide, frightened eyes, then inhaled, and the tone steadied, the tear sealed, the room calmed. Lissari exhaled in relief. Lyria slumped against him, exhausted. "You did it," Aaron whispered. "You helped," she mumbled into his sleeve. He smiled. "I always will." The weeks passed like this, progress, setbacks, breakthroughs. Lyria grew stronger, braver, more precise. And Aaron grew more certain that he had been meant to find her long before he ever knew her name. He learned how to stabilize distortions with his presence, something he could not explain, something Lissari studied endlessly, muttering about latent timeline imprinting and quantum resonance between selves. He didn't understand the science, but he understood the way Lyria looked at him, the same way she must have looked at the version of him who had saved her before. Enough trust to move worlds. 3 months into training, Aaron was reviewing lesson plans in his quarters when Providence, his ship's AI, spoke through his wrist comm. "Lieutenant, I've been analyzing the temporal logs again." Aaron groaned. "Please don't tell me I have a third version of myself." "No, but you should see this." A hologram shimmered above the comm. It showed the dimensional energy pattern from Lyria's most recent training session. And another pattern taken from the breach 6 months ago. They matched perfectly. Aaron's stomach dropped. "Providence, what are you saying?" "The entity we just repelled, the one in the training hall, wasn't a random intrusion. It was identical to the woven time version of you fought, meaning the breaches are not spontaneous." Aaron's pulse quickened. "They're coordinated." "Yes," Providence said gently, "and targeted specifically at the princess, and by extension at you, because you're the one prophesied to stand in their way." Aaron ran a hand through his hair. "If these things are planning something, we need to." A sharp tone cut him off, an alarm not loud, not piercing, but vibrating at a frequency that made his skin crawl. Providence's voice dropped to a whisper. "Lieutenant, dimensional energy spike detected, in the palace, now." Aaron bolted. He didn't need directions, he didn't need logic. His body remembered where to go even if his mind didn't. Lyria's garden, the place everything had begun. He sprinted through the luminous corridors, rounded a corner. And froze, space was already bending. A breach was forming at the edge of the crystal pond, crackling with hostile energy. The air warped violently, twisting reflections on the water. Guards were unconscious again. Queen Elendra stood in front of the forming rift, hands outstretched, trying desperately to slow the breach with her own harmonic abilities. But her strength was not enough. Lyria stood behind her, shaking violently, face pale with terror. "Aaron," she cried, "it's stronger." He rushed forward, the breach pulsed, but something was different this time. 2 energy signatures, 2 pulses, 2 beings pushing through. Thalen's voice echoed from behind Aaron as he arrived, breathless. "It's a twin breach, 2 entities linked in the same rift." Aaron didn't hear the rest. He stepped in front of Lyria. The breach surged. A claw made of refracted light began to emerge. Lyria's scream tore through the air. Aaron's hands shot forward, instinct overriding thought. Reality shook. Something inside him, something belonging to the version of himself that had lived in woven time, ignited. He pushed back against the breach with everything he had, but it wasn't enough. Not alone. Lyria staggered forward, grabbed his sleeve with trembling hands, and began to sing, not the harmonic technique Lissari had taught her, not the careful practiced tones, a new melody, one she had never sung before, one she remembered from a timeline Aaron had never lived, a melody he had once taught her. Aaron felt the resonance between them snap together like 2 halves of a lock. Her voice wove through his stabilizing force. His presence amplified her harmonics. The breach shrieked, an impossible sound like reality protesting the interference. Then, light exploded, silence fell, the breach shattered inward and collapsed. For a moment nothing moved. Then Lyria collapsed into Aaron's arms, sobbing with relief. "You remembered," she whispered hoarsely. "You remembered the song." Aaron held her tighter, throat burning. "I didn't," he said quietly, "but you did." That was enough. Queen Elendra sank to her knees beside them, overwhelmed. Thalen whispered, voice trembling, the prophecy's final verse. "The guardian shall stand in the moment when the shadow learns to strike twice." This was only the beginning. Aaron felt the weight of those words settle into his bones. The entities were escalating, learning, evolving. And somewhere in the broken web of timelines, the version of him who had once walked between moments was sending a message. Prepare. Something worse is coming. Aaron tightened his hold on Lyria. "I won't let anything hurt you," he whispered. She nodded, tears glowing softly. "I know," she breathed. "You never do." And for the first time, Aaron felt, not remembered, but felt that she was right. The palace changed after the twin breach. Not visibly, not in its shimmering corridors or crystalline chambers, but in atmosphere. The Elendari, normally composed and elegant, moved with the silent coordination of a species preparing for war. Lyria's safety protocols tripled. Scholars ran models day and night. Guards patrolled with weapons drawn, and Aaron barely slept. He stayed in the garden with Lyria during her lessons, walked beside her in the halls, sat outside her room until she fell asleep, then remained until she woke again. Queen Elendra didn't question it, because she saw, long before Aaron admitted it, that the Kesharian bond wasn't something he chose. It had chosen him. The dimensional readings climbed slowly but steadily over the next 2 weeks. Not enough to trigger alarms, just enough to unsettle Lissari. "Something is gathering power," she said one evening, pacing across the research chamber. "A build-up in subspatial frequency. If the pattern continues, we estimate a major breach in less than 10 cycles." "How major?" Aaron asked. Lissari swallowed, her skin flickered an ominous violet. "Cataclysmic." Aaron glanced toward the window where Lyria and Queen Elendra stood talking softly. "She's getting stronger," he said. "Our recent sessions, she can stabilize a tier faster than ever." "Yes," Lissari said, "but the enemy is getting stronger, too. You've seen the twin breach. They're learning from each attempt. They adapt." "Then we adapt too." Lissari lowered her voice. "Lieutenant, if the next breach is large enough, Lyria's voice alone won't be sufficient. She will need an anchor, someone who can stabilize the entire harmonic field around her." Aaron felt a cold realization crawl through him. "You mean me?" "Yes," Lissari said, "only you." "Why only me?" "Because you are the only being in this palace who exists partially outside the linear timeline. The woven time imprint left a resonance on your quantum structure. When Lyria sings, she harmonizes with you. You amplify her abilities exponentially." Aaron stared at her. "So the version of me who lived through that woven moment, I didn't just save her. I made myself a part of whatever she's becoming." Lissari nodded. "You are her stabilizer. She is your frequency. Together you form a harmonic lock the entities cannot break." Aaron swallowed. "And if this major breach happens and we fail?" Lissari closed her eyes. "Then reality here collapses." The breach came on the 7th night. Not gradually, not with warning, like a blade cutting through silence. Aaron woke to a vibration so deep it felt like the palace itself was crying out. Light fractured across the ceiling. His breath fogged, temperature dropped as dimensional energy flooded the space. Then, a sound, not an alarm, a scream. "Lyria." Aaron sprinted before thought formed. His feet pounded through corridors as reality twisted around him, hallways shimmering, air vibrating with discordant tones that made his teeth ring. He burst into the grand atrium, and the world was tearing apart. A breach 3 times larger than any before dominated the center of the chamber, swirling like a storm of broken stars. Debris floated. Gravity buckled. Guards lay unconscious, flung aside like scattered toys. Queen Elendra stood in front of the breach, arms outstretched, pushing back with every ounce of her power. Behind her, Lyria trembled, tears glowing, hands clutched to her chest as if trying to hold in her shaking heart. "Aaron," she cried when she saw him. He moved. The breach saw him. It pulsed, recognizing the stabilizer, targeting him, trying to tear him out of the timeline. Reality fractured in thin lines around his body as if the universe were trying to erase him. But he stayed standing. He walked forward. He forced himself into the breach's gravitational pull like stepping through a hurricane. Lyria's voice cracked. "Aaron, I can't. It's too big. I can't stop it." "Yes, you can," he said, forcing his voice steady. "But you can't do it alone." He knelt and reached out his hand. "Lyria, sing." She shook her head violently. "I'll lose control." "No," he whispered. "Not while I'm here, I promise." Her breath hitched. Promises mattered to her. Promises were sacred. Promises were memory. She placed her small hand in his, and something ignited between them. A resonance like the two of them had always been 2 halves of the same chord waiting to be struck together. Aaron felt warmth explode through his chest, familiar and alien. The woven time imprint, the version of him who had fought before. The version Lyria remembered. Stepping forward through memory he did not have, Lyria inhaled and sang not a tone. Not a melody, a command, the song of order. It rippled outward, a wave of harmonic light weaving into the breach. The distortion convulsed violently, lashing out with tendrils of impossible energy. One wrapped around Aaron's arm, ripping at him, pulling at his existence. Aaron held firm. He pushed back, stabilizing the harmonic field around her, anchoring her, becoming the point that the whole universe bent around. Lyria's voice rose, clear and fierce. The breach cracked, screamed, folded. Aaron felt the second entity inside, larger, smarter, older, trying to force its way through. He felt it pushing against Lyria's voice, felt the harmonic pressure build, felt reality strain. And then he pushed harder. Every timeline imprint within him surged. Every echo of what he had been. Every version of himself he had forgotten. And he spoke, not loudly, but with absolute certainty. "She is under my protection." The breach convulsed. Lyria's voice soared. Light exploded outward, and the entire dimensional rift shattered like breaking glass. Silence crashed into the chamber. Lights dimmed, air stilled. Gravity stabilized. Aaron collapsed to the floor, chest burning. Lyria collapsed with him, clinging desperately to his tunic. Queen Elendra sank to her knees beside them, tears streaking down her luminous cheeks. Behind them, scholars and guards began to stir, stunned. Aaron held Lyria tightly. "It's over," he whispered. She shook her head, pressing her forehead into his shoulder. "No," she whispered. "It's safe because you stayed." His throat tightened. "You're safe because you were brave." She looked up at him with tear-bright eyes that saw more than a child should ever know. "You came back twice," she whispered. "Once in the time that broke, once in the time that stayed. That means you'll always come back." Aaron exhaled shakily.
¿Dónde mero moon? Güey, qué pedo, güey. México parece un servidor de Roblox. De la nada suceden cosas bien randoms, güey. La noche de perreo,